clothes, and the people have been extinguished. Their lives have been taken. And our job was to sort all the many clothes that they had brought along from home. It took a while to get used to it.
We're ready to go.
Okay. So, did you pick this last bit up? And so I picked up this group of clothing, folded neatly together. Probably the mother made sure, or the father, that the boy keeps his clothes nice.
Nice. Like this.
That's where it is.
Yeah.
Together, and so I visualized a 14-year-old boy. He just came home from school, and he probably changed clothes, and he went out to do a little soccer with his buddies, and there was his soccer shoes, just like my brothers had when they played soccer. I had to do that to know that there was a real human being in this clothes, and once in a while. And while we worked there, we worked right behind gas chamber and crematorium number 4. And we passed it every morning and every night going to work. But we had to go almost around it. We worked behind it. And this is the only gas chamber and crematorium in Auschwitz-Birkenau where that was not fortified with sound, that was not soundproofed. So we could hear the children cry and the people screaming, and the screaming just getting lower and lower as their energies gave out. Even today, I have a hard time listening to children cry. But I've overcome a good part of it.
Was there smoke? Did you see smoke from
every day as we went to work? We saw the chimneys of the gas chambers, of the crematoriums, billowing. The smoke only, not the flame. I never saw the flame, but a heavy smoke coming out of it. And during the day we saw the train come in, the people arriving at the gas chamber. There was this very perfect lawn right in front of it with a little white picket fence. One would never guess what that building stands for. We passed it every morning and came back every night. The inmates had planted flower right against the wall and along the picket fence. Who in the world would have ever guessed that in that building, behind those beautiful flowers, human beings were being murdered by the hundreds at a time? It is their screams that haunt us today. They would sit on the lawn. They would be asked to get undressed because there was no dressing room with this gas chamber and crematorium, number 4. There were with the others. And so they had to do it on the lawn. And we saw it. It's almost as much as a human being can bear, and no more. Extinguish them. In a matter of minutes, it seems. Just hundreds of them died, murdered, cold-blooded murder.
At that time?
They carried them out to the crematorium to burn them.
Do you think that those who were sitting on the grave, did they know, do you think by then they knew?
Nobody knew. Nobody knew.
Even with the smoke?
Yes, and the kids would be given something sweet to lick, and the SS very kindly showed them to relax. Their turn will come. Of course, the new people were not brought there while they were murdering others. You see, they murdered those who were brought there, but not until their voices were
Silenced, yeah.
silenced did they bring the rest.
They were deceived, thinking they were
They were
going to
deceived.
be showered in.
Yes. Well, of course, you know, they were built to deceive these people. They had shower heads all over,
fake shower
and they were told they arrived very dirty. They've been on the road for so long, and so the soap and the towels seemed so welcoming, and instead of water, gas came out of there. Actually, it was prussic acid.
Was that called Cyclone B?
Prussic acid.
Yeah.
They called it Zyklon B.
Yes.
Yeah. They came in canisters. And when they finished, there were all these piles of canisters by the gas chamber. Well, each day we did quite a bit of work, and there was so much to do. It just seemed like a lifetime to finish all that work. We had no idea how the war is coming along, and we had no idea if we will even see the sunset that day, let alone what's going to happen in the war. And so we were so involved with our lives, and many people just ran against the electric wire fences. In the mornings, every morning, we had to stand in line for Zähl Appell, which means head count. And every morning they would count us off, and then we would march to work. And every night we marched back, and we had to stand up for Zähl Appell again. Actually, that word can be broken down. Zähl is Zahl in German. It means to count. Appell is stand erect, stand up. In the military, they use these words. So Zähl Appell is head count, and we learned a lot of German words that were not in my German textbook in high school. Yeah. I would never have missed them if I never have learned about them. Well, occasionally some people escaped, but most of the time they were caught, and if so, they were caught and brought back. And I know at one time a German Jewish woman escaped to her non-Jewish husband, she was found and brought back, and we all had to witness her execution by hanging from a truck. Such a sight will never ever leave my memory. Yeah. One day, my mother found a huge diamond, and she whispered to me, wouldn't it be nice to start with this when we get out of here? And I thought, my mother really thinks that she's going to get out of here. When what's happening a few hundred yards from here, they're murdering us from left and right. How could she ever think that we're going to get out of here? I said, Mother, please get rid of it. I couldn't even look at her to tell her. I had to have a poker face, as they call it. I didn't want to show any sign of anything that's aufmerksam, as we say in German. That means that something is happening. I can tell it by your face. And so I whispered to her to get rid of it. And I saw her reach down to her shoes, which came up to the middle of her calf, and I saw her just slip it in there, in around the heel, to fall down by the heel of her shoe. And I sighed a sigh of relief and looked at Anushka, and she too. But there are many stories through the Holocaust, and I'm sure that I will not be able to cover quite a few of them here in the making of this film.
I think it must be hard for you.
My mother was a very generous woman. She wanted to help everybody, even though her own life was in danger by doing that. And so I had to, from time to time, make her aware that, Mom, you have 2 daughters here to be concerned about. We certainly don't want to live without a mother. And so she, for a couple of days, she would forget that, and then she would do something foolish. One time, well, before I started that, next to us was another enclosed area, and that was for the twins. They call them Zwillingen in German. And there are all these twins there with all sorts of bandages on their legs and eyes, and they were experimented on by Dr. Joseph Mengele. And my mother felt very sorry for them, and there were a couple of Zwillings who were related to us from our town, the Künstler girls. Wally and Mary were their first and last names. Actually, one of them eventually survived and went to live in Arizona, I think Tucson, Arizona. And the other one immigrated to Israel. So these 2 survived, but many times they experimented on one and it didn't go the way they wanted it to, and so they shot the other one too because they could no longer use the other one. But you see, Hitler really wanted to open up the secrets to have twins so that Hitler could build up a brand new army in 10 years or 20 years. And I can just see them marching down a broad street, all with little Hitler mustaches. But it's horrifying to think that they wanted to know the secrets to twins. But they were doing that. Also, they were trying to find out how to change the color of eyes. And a number of twins went blind over these experiments. My mother felt so badly for them. Of course, we all did. That we found some food that people had wrapped up in their clothes. And of course, we were always hungry and we ate whatever we found. But sometimes my mother just put it together in a dress or some cloth that was, we always had these available, wrapped it up and put some bits of stones in it to weigh them. And then at a certain time, whenever she thought was a safe time, she would throw it across the electric wire fence into the twin lager. But this time, the guard took notice that they were running all towards something. And he looked into it, and it was a package. And my mother is the one who threw it over. And I don't know how he communicated this, but somebody in my area found out that somebody threw something over there and came to investigate it in our area and found my mother, and they took her immediately to the Lager Commandant. And my sister and I were shuddering, just thinking that my mother is going to be cut off from the rest of us.
I'm sorry, I was just thinking if you could close the door, the noise.
No, that noise is gone.
Gloria, how are you holding?
Mother. They,
So I want
Yep.
to talk about it, but I get distracted when you talk or when you move around. And
I'm sorry. But
yeah, we've got to.
I'm sorry.
yeah, I want to make this smooth so that
Yes.
yeah. So, but soon we saw my mother. Are you on? Oh, it's so far down now I can't see the red light, so I didn't know that you're on. I'm on.
Red light means it's on.
Okay,
Recording.
it's not the red light.
Did you not notice it before?
I
guess
always
you have
watch the red light so that I know where my focal point
to-
is.
Oh, good for you.
What's the red light?
You're doing great.
Oh, okay.
Doing great.
Soon my mother came back with that person who took her to the Lager Commandant, and she was smiling, and so I thought, oh, thank God, she's alive. It looks like if they beat her up, she wouldn't be smiling. So something must have happened there, and she told us, of course, later that was the person who took her there was the person who was in charge of our work, and she was very pleased with the hard work that the three Hollanders, my sister, my mother, and I did, and so put in a very good word for us to the Lager Commandant and said, now if the girls will lose their mother, then their work is not going to be good anymore. And so I would suggest that please to forgive her this time. And she was given a real dressing down. The Lager Commandant told her that if you ever do this again, you will never see daylight anymore. So, and she promised she will never do it again. And she came back smiling. I don't know how she does it, but she did it.
Did she never do it again?
She, not that way, at least.
Wow.
Yeah. But she could have been hung, she could have been shot, she could have been beaten,
Sure.
and that was a daily affair. It would not have been anything new where we were. But to a 48-year-old woman, by then she was probably close to 49. I don't know what time of the year this was anymore. Yeah. Oh, and periodically we went through selections by Dr. Joseph Mengele, and who decided, by the way, he was called the Angel of Death, because he decided who should live and who should die, just by flipping his finger this way or that way. He would have a little stick in his hand, which would indicate which side the person should go to the left or to the right. And of course, one meant to the gas chamber and the other meant back to work. Well, this time I too was sent to the other side, along with 30 other women and girls. All I could think of at the time was that this is going to kill my mother, even though I'm the one who was sent, who was being sent to the gas chamber. But all I could think of is my mother, because I thought that if they take me out, my mother is going to mourn for me, and there is no. This is no time to mourn, because that wears you down. Once you start mourning, there's no way back anymore. People who start mourning end up dying, or end up going against the electric wire fences. And I didn't want to see my mother that way, and I really worried about her after I was taken away. Around the middle of the night sometime, a truck came to take us all away. This is, of course, the most difficult part of my life. I was being condemned to death and leaving behind my mother and my sister to mourn for me. So here we are talking, and the girls were crying. We should have gone against the electric wire fences. We shouldn't have waited for this. That way we could do it when we wanted to die, not when they select us to die. Nonsense. Says this is where we stand. We go from here on. So let's just. There was one girl up there from Baraxas, and I didn't really know her, but I knew of her. My parents knew her and her family, because when we still had a store under the Czech period, my parents used to shop in their wholesale market. And so every Wednesday they would go into Baraxas, to town in a kochi, and come back with things for us as we were children. So I had fond memories of Wednesdays when Dad and Mother went to Baraxas shopping for our store, because there was always something for us, Anushka and me. And Bobby at home, my grandma, would always tell us stories to stay awake till we hear the horses come nearby with their bells around their necks, because we recognized our bells. And so that was our Bella and Gidra, our two horses we loved so much. And so Grandma promised to us that when they come home, she's going to wake us up. But once we went to sleep, there was no waking up. We were just too sleepy to wake up. But sometimes we did. So where was I going with this?
Did you know where your fate was when they put you on the truck?
With the girl.
Oh, yes, that's right. And so there was the girl from Baraxas, in whose wholesale market we shopped at. And so she was telling me that we shouldn't worry so much about it. This is what it would end up to be. After all, how long can we live on the amount of food that we're getting? True, our food, in terms of calories, I didn't know calories in those days, but when I learned about calories in the United States, now you know that I survived. But I thought of Auschwitz, and one day I decided to add up all the calories that consisted in the food that I was given in the best possible day that I could recall. And I came up with 450 to 500 calories on the best day. And it was determined that on this diet, one could live from 3 to 5 months, depending on the amount of what sort of situation were we in when we arrived. Yeah. So I don't know. We would have to go through a few more of these selections, and who wants to do that? Well, one guard took us to the truck and locked it in, and another guard, a Hungarian guard, came to close the canvas in the back. And he looked at me, and he said to me in Hungarian, in surprise, he said, "You too?" He said, "Te is? You too?" And I just nodded, acknowledging my fate. After he saw me there, well, let me first tell you that this Hungarian guard was our guard at the Canada Work Detail. Remember, I couldn't remember the name of the place? The Canada Work Detail. And he sometimes spoke in Hungarian to my mother. And he told my mother that he was not in Auschwitz by choice, that he has a granddaughter in Budapest. He even took out his wallet from his rear pocket, and in it was a little black and white snapshot of a young girl of about 9 years old, maybe, and it was white on this black and white. Her hair was white, and she had 2 long braids like I had. And I remember thinking, she can keep her braids, but I can't. But that's how a 14-year-old thinks. Anyway, it was this guard who sometimes spoke to us. There were no conversations, but a word here and there. Just a human voice from him made him already better than anybody else there among the guards. And so he told all of us after he saw me there that you know that we are going to the gas chamber. He knew that we knew because he was our guard there. So said, those of you who want to jump off, you go ahead and do so, but if you're caught, you are not to give me away, for I may be able to save other lives yet. But if you do give me away, both you and I will be killed. And with that, he just closed the canvas drapes in the back, and he went up front, and he slowly drove off. The gas chambers were a good distance away. We had to march about an hour to get there each morning, and then back at night to our quarters. And so what I said, I thought quickly, if I stayed on this truck, I will be killed. If I jumped, I might be found and killed, but perhaps not. Here was my chance to see my mother again. And I said, who will come with me? But nobody responded. Everyone was totally emaciated, robbed of all energy and willpower, perhaps even the very last shred of hope. But I had my mother and sister to live for. So when that truck approached that familiar wooded area where there was a deep ditch near the road, I jumped off the slow-moving truck, and I leaped down the embankment, and my feet touched water, ice-cold water, and I let myself down. It was pitch black. It was toward the end of December. And I fumbled around with my hands, and I touched a wall. But there were, I moved over a few feet, and there was a culvert. And I thought, this may be a good place. I never could see that from above because we were too far away. Not far to walk, but it was too far away to see how deep this ditch is or whether there's anything there. And I never had anything in mind, actually, because I never thought I needed to use it. But here I am, and I got myself in there. And it was pretty snug. It was actually sheer ice was touching the water that went through this culvert. I had nothing on. We were all totally naked. And we all had to give up our clothes at the time of the inspection, but only those who passed the selection were permitted to go back to get the little bunch of clothing that they had. But those of us who were sent to the other side did not have that privilege. We were all totally naked. And so I was down in this culvert about maybe 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and I heard the sirens go on in the camp. And the sirens would go on if the Allies would come to bomb, because it was wartime, remember, and a total blackout was observed. So, but a little light managed to seep through here and there. And I decided that it was not the Allies, that probably when the truck arrived at the gas chamber, then one person was missing, and that was me. And they probably sounded the alarm in order to look for me. And so now I have to wait for them to come and get me. And another 15, 20 minutes later, I heard the voices of men. And I thought, okay, here they are. I hope they don't have dogs. The one thing I don't want is to be ripped apart before I meet my maker. I mean, I really didn't expect to see my maker, because I don't think my maker would want me in this position. It's the Germans, but I just lay there waiting. The voices kept coming closer and closer. I didn't hear any dogs. I didn't hear any dogs doing anything. So perhaps they didn't have dogs, I don't know. And the voices in German, they spoke in German. There must have been about 3, 4, maybe even 5 people, because I heard these various voices. And when they came close, I thought, this is it. And they just passed me. And close to me was an electric wire fence. They couldn't go any further than that. So, and apparently they must have walked that way. I don't know that there was a road going the other way, but I heard their voices drown out that way. So I thought, now that I survived this one, I'm going to leave my hiding place. I decided to leave it in the middle of the night, and I of course, I stayed there that night. So I stayed there about 24 hours that night until the following night without any food or clothing. And although this was in the midst of winter, I just have no recollection of feeling cold or having any other feelings except this great exuberance. I felt that I've defeated the entire German army. Well, I was very young when I look back now thinking that way. So maybe it was good for my ego or for whatever. But I knew that I was in deep danger, and I was far from being out of it yet. Because I was still in Auschwitz. I was just in a different direction. So I stayed there till the middle of the following night, and then I decided to leave my hiding place. And I got up to the roadside, and I looked around, and it was total blackness, just total blackness, but a little light, much like that little light I'm looking at the camera, only it was not red. and it was just regular white. The light, what color would that be? Like regular light. And so I just decided to follow that little light, really not knowing if it would be straight into SS headquarters or into a men's barrack or what. So I came to a building and I decided that I'm going to go in there because what else could I do? I found myself that it was the killing center. Of all places, I walked straight into the killing center. But because it is the killing center, probably that's why I didn't see any guards, or doors locked. For I decided to go into this building, and the door was open, and no sentry there, like where I came from. So I entered quietly, and I just walked very slowly, and when I saw a bunk bed, I quickly climbed up to the third tier, just a 14-year-old would, and suddenly somebody screamed. And I caught my mouth with my hand indicating to her not to scream, not to give me away. Of course, she had no idea what I'm talking about. So I told her I just saved my life, and that's why I have no clothes on. And I quickly told her my predicament. So she told me to come in to her bed. There are 10 people sleeping in one bunk bed. And I know how that is because that's how we slept in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And so that was very generous of her to do that. And she quickly took off her large men's coat that she slept in, and she draped it around me. And I explained to her my terrible predicament, and so she asked me to stay there. I stayed there that night, and the following morning, I knew the routine, of course, and so we lined up for Seelappell. And by that time, I was in her overcoat, and I saw her somewhere not far from me in another overcoat. See, she must have gotten up in the middle of the night and obtained an overcoat for herself from a dead person. For that was the way that we improved our wardrobe in Auschwitz-Birkenau. I was elated that it was a woman's voice that started screaming, for that gave me hope that I may have a chance to stay here. But we were lined up and we were counted off, and then we were ordered into nearby cattle cars, for I was very close to the railroad platform, and the train actually took us away from Auschwitz, went to Bergen-Belsen, and there I turned 15 years old. I went through 6 additional camps, and so I'm just going to name the camps and briefly tell you what I did in each camp, and then how we were liberated, what happened to the rest of us.
Good.
Okay. I spent 13 months through my Holocaust experiences. Took me through 7 camps in 13 months. And there were, except for Bergen-Belsen, where I really didn't work, I turned 15 years old, and nobody noticed it, nobody knew about it, and all alone, wondering where my family was. It was very lonely for them. And from there I was taken to Braunschweig, which was an industrial city. At this time, canning fish is what they did, because all the meat went to the soldiers in the front. And so every day we passed by a factory that smelled blocks away. I couldn't smell. I couldn't smell because I forgot to tell you that in Auschwitz I lost my sense of smell totally. I kept throwing up after I arrived, and my mother worried about me because I kept losing weight and rapidly, and it was from the stench of burnt human bodies, all combined with human excrement, unbelievable things. And one day, I no longer complained. I just did my work. I no longer threw up, and that was that. But everybody else complained, and I listened. But I really didn't have much of a chance to think about this too much, because there were other things occupying our lives, with work and with constant threats and constant ordering us doing this, to do this and that. And what did that word mean? It's always trying to find out, what did he say, or what did they announce? Sometimes it was the fault of the system. Sometimes we just didn't understand the words. So it was a multitude of things. But I lost my sense of smell, and I'll pick up on this later when I'm in Sweden. I actually didn't miss it, and I didn't even know that I lost my sense of smell. But I'm actually putting that in retrospect. So in Braunschweig, we were given shovels, and we had to clear the major streets, the major boulevards, from the debris of the bombs by the Allies, and open up these major boulevards so that German artillery and vehicles could pass through. Well, from there I was Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen, Braunschweig. Then I was taken to Hanover, Germany, where I worked on an assembly line at the Continental Gummiwerke in Hanover, making gas masks. For Hitler wanted each of his subjects to have a gas mask, fearing poison gas attacks by the Allies, which, however, never materialized, thank God. And so they utilized our strength in Hanover in this way. From there I was taken to Hamburg, where my family traveled from Czechoslovakia to Hamburg to travel to the United States. And they came back home for visits. All three of them came home at different times. And they traveled from Czechoslovakia to Germany in Hamburg. And I heard so much about Hamburg, what a beautiful city it was. And there I was, another generation later, working as a slave laborer for Hitler in Hamburg, Germany. I did return to Hamburg much later, when it was rebuilt, and it was indeed a beautiful city. But I could no longer think of it as my relatives did. But while I slaved there, I did think of my Aunt Bella and my Uncle Adolf. I had an uncle by the name of Adolf, and my Aunt Leni, and how they praised Hamburg and how much they liked to be there, to transfer to the ship and from the ship to come home and go back home to the United States. Well, I shall return now. From there, I was taken to another place where I worked 1,200 feet underground in a salt mine, where Hitler moved his major armaments industry, fearing protecting them from Allied bombardments. They were bombed. They were in 3-4 different places, and the Allies knew where they were, and so Hitler moved them to the salt mines. Now, I was selected to do that in the previous camp, but I had no idea that I was being selected. We just had to put up our arms and hold it there. And the SS brought in civilians, and there they were in suits and ties. When did I see a civilian dressed so nicely? And so they came and looked our hands over. And they would say, do, and pointing to me as well. And those of us who were pointed to had to go up front and just wait till the selection is completed. And when a truckload of us, actually there were 2 truckloads, finished, we were excused and we could go back to the barracks. We, who were dues, could not do that. We had to wait for the trucks, and then they took us with trucks away to Bindorf. That's Bendorf. Of course, Dorf means a little town. So Bindorf, I don't know what Bin means, but that's where we were, and that's a small town, but it had a major meaning for Germany, and they had stored all sorts of explosives in one building right next to us, above ground, and a major hit to that building would have meant the lives of many who were there as slave laborers from different countries in Europe under German occupation. Now, I was taken into the mine with all the others who were selected with me, and I was assigned to a German man in civilian clothing to be my trainer, and he was training me to do a function for the guidance missile system of the V-1 and V-2 series rockets. And this man was very kind, and when he saw that I'm so hungry, he would put his sandwich over there someplace, and with our eyes met, and he was trying to tell me that I may eat that which he left there for me, his sandwich. But of course, I had to be very careful, both my trainer and I, because the slightest infraction in this top secret place was punishable by a bullet through the head. And I did eat from his sandwich. I didn't dare eat all of it, but I ate from it. And he began to bring me my own sandwich. And to eat something like that in the open was very dangerous, very dangerous. I would just bend down for some excuse to take a bite and leave it even on the floor or somewhere there and take a bite of his food. And I think this man helped me from starvation, because we worked long hours everywhere in the camps. We worked 12, suddenly I forgot, I think it's 12 hours a day. We had a half an hour rest for soup in the middle of the day, and that was the only rest we had. We couldn't even go to the restroom. There was nobody to take us there. So, what can we do? What could we do? It was an unbelievable life. But working in the mine was actually good for me. I was not exposed to the elements outside in this one little dress and a coat. And by that time I had wooden shoes. My leather shoes from home I had to leave behind during the selection, the last selection that I had to go through. So I did my best. I kept up with the rest, and this man was. I returned to Germany later. I learned that, and there was an article about me in the German newspaper, and when I returned, a lady about in the 90s wrote a letter to the newspaper, which is a major paper in Germany, and said, my husband was a judge, and Hitler deposed him and sent him to the occupation areas, and they sent him. He was sent to this camp where I was, and it could be him who brought me the sandwiches, because he would come home and he would tell her, "You should see those poor emaciated women. They can hardly hold themselves up. They are so weak and hungry, and they have to work these long hours." So he said to her, "Perhaps you could make her another sandwich so that I could eat mine." Oh, so she lovingly made another sandwich, and he told me that that's from his wife.
Wow.
And here is, so many years later, I'm back in Germany, and I can't believe all the things that unexpectedly happened to me.
When you jumped off the train, jumped off that truck,
Yes.
I was just curious.
Sure.
Did you have shoes?
No.
Because you were naked, you had no clothes.
No, I was stark naked.
In the winter.
I walked.
No shoes.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, no shoes. I stood there at Sailapel without any shoes on. I only had that coat on at that point.
Wow.
Yeah. In my experiences from one camp to another, however, let's see, which camp was it? Could be from Braunschweig. I finally figured it out in my book, but I'm not going to be committed. It took me a while to figure it out, but I did. There was a woman who had these wonderful shoes on, very much like what my mother had, up to here. And they were made for Anushka, mother, and me for Pesach. Every Pesach, the women got new shoes. And for Rosh Hashanah, all the men got suits and new shoes. You see, so we went with new shoes to Auschwitz-Birkenau.
Wow.
My mother came home with it. You imagine, and my sister too, it lasted. It was very good, strong shoes. It was important that.
They look like they're boots.
Yeah. Then that's very fashionable here now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What happened with the diamond that your mother dropped into her shoe?
Ah, thank you for remembering that. Is this a good time to?
Yeah, well, we've got
Or shall we wait till?
5 more minutes on this.
I think I should finish this sequence and get to the question and answer period, okay? Well, let me just think where I was.
I don't know. We could finish this tape and start another one. I don't know if you want to do that.
Well,
Because we have like 5 minutes on this one.
okay. When there's only a half a minute, would you put up a finger
Okay.
so that
Yes.
I finish my sentence?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, let me just think where I was here. Where was I?
You were talking about boots, something that I don't know if that was part of the story.
Yeah. We were on the train, traveling from one camp to another, and we were so hungry, we were so tired, we were just miserable. And it took me a while to realize, I was thinking of my mother, and it took me a while to realize that somebody is mourning. You know, just like when something hurts. She was really mourning, and I didn't hear her until now. So when I looked at her, I thought, gosh, that's an old lady like my mother. And perhaps she lost her daughter. So I took an interest here in her suddenly and went up to her, and she told me that she had a son and a daughter, and they are not alive anymore. But I kept her spirits alive. I told her that you cannot tell. You see, my mother thinks I'm dead too, and I'm alive, and your daughter and son could be still alive. So she says, when I die, I want you to have my shoes. And I said, no, you need your shoes. You need your shoes when you're not going to die. You're going to get well, and I'll help you. And so she said, you be my daughter when I don't have a daughter. And I said, and you be my mom while I don't have a mom. And so, within minutes she died. And so when we came to a stop in the camp, actually at the end of the 7th camp, this was at the end of the 7th camp. You see, I'm jumping now,
That's okay.
which I should not do.
That's okay.
At the very end, we were going to be shot, and they took us out already to shoot us. And it was on that journey that she was with me. And I thought, well, I'm not going to need those shoes anymore anyway. And we heard the Germans outside discuss our fate, and that's how we learned that we're going to be shot in these open fields when the train stopped in the middle of nowhere. And so they told us to throw out the sick and the dead, but we couldn't get ourselves to hurt the sick anymore. But we pushed over the dead. I was too occupied with my surrogate mom here, and so I pushed her over, and I said, goodbye, my friend. I'll see you in heaven. That was my last words to her. And I never saw her again, but I'll never forget her. See, she had a real medical problem. She was full of yellow blisters all over, and that's why she moaned. I said, is there any reason why you're crying? He says, I'm hurting so much. And so she opened up her dress, and I couldn't believe this. This size blisters. I still don't know what they could be. I asked my son, who is a doctor, and he had no idea, but they were all yellow blisters. And she was so in horrible pain. So I told her that I want her to move into the corner so I could hold my hand that way and protect her from other people falling over her. But I said goodbye to her there. Yeah.
Oh, I guess I think 2 minutes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it'll be over 2 minutes.
Okay. So it so happened, a miracle really happened there. The Germans changed their minds, and we didn't know for years why. Finally, I came across a little book which was about this Now that I want to speak fast, I can think fast.
It's okay. I can put it in.
It was
another-
about this rescue mission. And Bernadotte comes in. He was just finished talking with Himmler, and the word came down, however way they communicated, to save everybody and to use them as take them to Sweden, because Bernadotte told Himmler to do these people some good, because the Allies, it will be just a matter of days before the war will be over, and the Allies not going to treat him very well. They're going to string him up if he doesn't change his ways or do something good for us. I cannot speak coherently anymore.
I think that's 1 minute.
So they saved our lives. They did not. They were going to shoot all of us.
And you knew that.
Well, no, I didn't know it until
you
then.
assumed it. I mean, when you were on the train.
Only,
you assumed that was
only
gonna
then,
happen.
only then.